So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Business Networking with Vipul Bondal on Thinkly Talks. And today is our 12th episode. And we've had some fabulous people on this show earlier. We've had Suresh Menon, who's a sales and marketing consultant. We've had Adi Pocha, who's a corporate filmmaker. We've had Charu Datta Pandey, who is a digital mindset coach, the only one of his kind in the country at least. We've had Niket Karveer, who's branding specialist, branding and design specialist. We've had Sanjay Wadhwa, who's a very well-known business coach. And more recently, we've had Tarun Kumar Bansal of Sagacious IP. So we've had some fabulous people on the show, and I'm very thankful to all of you for the kind of response we've got onto the podcast till now. So I have another special person with me today. This person has been a friend for many years now, and I almost arm twisted him to come over this show after a very short break that he was on, and he's just back after a short break with his family for about a week or so, and I just dragged him onto the show. I said, I have to have you on the next available Wednesday, and he's obliged. So gives me great pleasure to welcome my dear friend, Advocate Alhad Oak. Welcome, Alhad.
Thank you, Vipul. Thank you for this opportunity. It's a real privilege to be with you on this Thinkly Talks.
My pleasure as well, Alhad. So I'll give you a little introduction of Alhad. Alhad is a lawyer by profession. He runs a company called YNZ Legal, and why YNZ, we will ask him soon. He's had a corporate practice. He was in the corporate side for about 12 years, and he's been practicing independently for the last 15 years. So he's got close to about 3 decades of experience under his belt. He worked with Gateway Terminals India Private Limited, a container terminal based at Navasheva and JNPT. He is married to Kalyani Oak, a self-established company secretary. He's got 2 lovely children, Gayatri and Ishwari, whom I've also had the pleasure of meeting before. He would like to own a Mudol hound, is what he says. Although I can assure you, Alhad, handling a Mudol hound is not easy. He's a wildlife photographer. I mean, that is something that he does. And that's why I guess he's gone on his holiday as well. So he just takes his camera and goes off shooting of a different kind. And, unusually, he says he loves being creative. His burning desire, and this is something that I really want to share with you. So he wants to create a jungle on barren land, and he says it'll be at least 252 acres of jungle, and that is something that is his burning desire. And something also more interesting is he says he can keep his mouth shut for a very long time, and I can vouch for it. I know that he can do that. So let's begin with welcome to Business Network with Vipul Bondal, Alhad.
Sure, looking forward. Thank you so much. Beautiful introduction.
Okay. So firstly, why YNZ Legal? What is the secret behind the name YNZ Legal, if you can tell us?
Sure. So typically, if you look at in our fraternity, the law firms are known by the name of the founder, and the
That's right.
legacy goes on. However, when I initiated the practice, I felt that the legacy should go beyond the individual, and it should be known by as a firm. And that's
Right.
where I thought it should be something which should be in resonance with the team. And that's where our team is young and zealous. And
Oh, okay.
YNZ stands for young and zealous.
Young and
And
zealous.
yeah, that's the acronym which is used. And we have been using this for a long time now.
Fantastic. Okay. So, Alhad, I mean, as you know, law has several specializations. There are many kinds of specialization, but our friend here specializes in a very specific area. I mean, although he does practice in a whole host of areas, but he specializes in what we call as contracts and drafting agreement, and that is you can say his specialization. So, and he has a track record which is unenviable in this. So, I would just kind of ask him this question because that's something that's always been on the back of my mind.
Right.
And I just thought I'll throw it to him and get some knowledge free of cost. So, Allah, what is what is a contract and what's an agreement? And if you can tell us what is common between these two documents, between let's say a contract and an agreement, and
Right.
and if you can explain what is different in very, very simple language.
Right, right. So agreement, simply put, I will not get into the definition of contract act and all that stuff, but in
All right.
simple terms, when I offer something and I give a promise and somebody accepts that promise, that's itself is an agreement, kind of.
Right.
So it need not be a written document; it could be oral agreement as well. Now, when we say a contract, it brings the element of enforceability in the eyes of law. So agreement could be any agreement. Let's go for a cup of tea. Let's go for to watch a cricket match. And I know you are an avid fan, so let's go for a cricket match. This is like an agree, and you say, okay, let's go together. It's an agreement.
It's an agreement. Okay, so it's not a
So
contract.
it's not a contract.
Okay.
So now, when you bring element of legality or enforceability in the court of law, then it becomes a contract, or it is referred to as a contract. So a simple formula is offer plus acceptance is an agreement, and when agreement plus enforceability brings a contract. So that's the
Okay.
difference.
Okay.
So illegal offers or illegal thing which is not proved by law, although both parties are committed to each other, that still is an agreement. It cannot be considered as a
cannot be a
contract.
contract. Oh, fantastic! That's the right way of saying it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I mean, you clarified it very simply. So we can go for let's go for a cup of tea is, for example, is an agreement.
Yeah.
But if I make a contract with you that I'll take you for a cup of tea every day,
Yeah.
and if you can sue me for not taking you there, is a contract. Is that would
Yeah.
that be
So
the right way of saying it?
so there has to be a promise. There has to be offer, promise, acceptance, and there should be a consideration. So
Consideration.
the consideration is for a cup of tea is that you tweak my brain, I tweak your brain. That's
Okay.
the consideration,
Okay.
or it
All
could be
right.
monetary consideration as well.
Fine. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. So typically, I mean, on a more serious note, when we speak of contracts or agreements, a lot of times,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to things like banking or telephone services,
Mhm.
suddenly, we have a problem and somebody says, but sir, you have signed this contract and, you have ticked on that, document which you signed online. Then there is something in there which is called as a fine print, which then gets you into trouble. Then you suddenly have to let go something, or you have to pay something more, or even if you disconnect, in the middle of the month, you have to pay till the end of the month. You were not aware of it, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. So, what is reading the fine print? And that's also the title of our discussion today. What do
Very
you
true.
mean by reading the fine print? And what does it mean? Why do you think it is important for businesses to, be reading the fine print? I mean, if you can explain maybe with a couple of examples.
Oh, sure. So fine prints, I will give two meanings to that. One is typically you will see, as you rightly mentioned, for any telecommunication contract or any software related contracts, you will see those contracts in very minute font. It's barely readable. And
Right.
when you get such kind of document, you will look at it, have a first look and say that, okay, I can read a couple of lines, but beyond that, I don't want to. I'm sure this must be all right. And that's the expectation. And that's
Correct.
the fair expectation. However, the second meaning of fine print is like minute reading of the document. Because
Right.
the finer you go into the document, you will get a lot of meanings out of the whole agreement. And typically, agreement is what? It's full of do's and don'ts, obligations, responsibilities, and all these kind of important elements of agreement. So basically, understanding between two parties. But it is critical that when I give a contract, the other party is expecting and understanding the same contract in the same spirit. They should understand this. But if that
Right.
is not happening, it's not really a contract because I am not understanding the whole context of it. But since I have
Correct.
signed, and as you rightly mentioned, I have ticked on the I accept. So a lot of times we open a new account on some of the mobile applications or websites or portals, and we simply go scroll down and go down there and I accept and go ahead. So it could be for banking transactions, it could be any of those transactions. So we have agreed to all that stuff. So that's the fine prints, and fine prints are very critical because you never know, it can come back and haunt you also. So there is a typical belief that once the contract is over or term is over, so to say, the obligations fall apart and there is no obligations on the both parties. However, you will be surprised that in some of the contracts, there are certain clauses which are identified as survival clause. So
Right.
survival means beyond the term of the agreement also, certain obligations will continue for 2 years, 3 years, in some cases 5 years also. And that is like a survival
Okay.
obligation. Now, when the survival
All right.
happens, it might go beyond the term of the agreement also. During the term, of course, it is enforceable, but beyond the term. I'll give an example of a case. Of course, I can't divulge the information of the parties. Here is a case of
That's
an
fine. That's fine.
Indian software company, a listed software company, and they engaged services of a foreign software services company. Now here, a big giant
Right.
is engaging a services of a smaller company, but which is outside India. And the idea is that, okay, we will give you an idea and concept, you develop a program and product for us, and you will hand over the product. So that's the basic understanding. Now, from the other party's perspective, the foreign company's perspective, one of the critical resource on the platform who's working and creating software, they are there, the project leaders and the developers and coders. So
Correct.
they have incorporated a specific clause called a non-solicitation clause, which means that as a company, I will not poach that company's employees for a period of 2 years.
After the
Now,
contract.
after the contract. So once
Okay.
the contract is over, the system is delivered. Now, I will not poach their employees for a period of 2 years.
Cool.
Now, here is what happened. The one of the project leads, he left the organization, joined somewhere else, and then joined Indian company. Naturally, when he had very good connects and he has a friendly relationship working over a 2 years period of time, so they got again reconnected and he joined. The US company or the foreign company, they filed a lawsuit against Indian company in Indian courts. Now, this happened after 1.5 years period of time post the termination of the agreement, which means that on the basis of that one particular clause, even if post that termination, the clause was enforceable. And they went to the court accepted, and the suit is on right now. So that is
Okay.
one example. And
Okay.
this example is definitely about a situation post. Now, what happens during the term? So I work with a lot of startups, and
Right.
you work with a lot of startups.
Yeah.
You see they are on high energy. They want to do something, a
Correct.
lot of action. They want to, so everything has to be done yesterday, kind of, and gung ho about and full of positivity. However, sometimes where they fail is about focusing on the documentation part. Now, here is a
Right.
story, and it's a real story. Again,
Okay.
can't divulge the information.
That's all right.
So, so from one of the startups, so we were representing an acquirer, acquisition, the investors or acquirers, and we went for a due diligence. And when we conducted the due diligence, we went to the initial stage of the organization, about how you created, how it was initiated, how the initial product was developed. And here the both guys promoters were the college engineering startups. Basically, they immediately after engineering they started this own firm, and they approached few educational institutions. They agreed that okay, we will be happy to share you some 25 lakh rupees as a grant, and on the basis of a proof of concept. So they provided certain ideas. Okay, we'll give you a grant of 25 lakh rupees, and guys were very happy. say whatever I get, okay, let me sign. They sign the
Yeah, that's
document
what
and
happens. Yeah.
directly went to the last page, signed the document. Here is the paper. So
Forget the fine print. They didn't even read the print, I guess.
no, not at all. So here is my bank account. I'm signing the document, transfer the money because I want to go, and its exuberance is
That
so high
happens.
that
Yeah, that happens.
they want to
Correct.
do it. And now the problem happened after 3 years. They worked really hard on the product. Product was really cutting edge. They created a good software tool. And when our investor wanted to invest in the company, when we went into the whole documentation, one of the critical piece when they signed that grant letter, that all the intellectual property rights for whatever they develop will be co-owned by the institution,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which means whatever 3 years they have worked, and the initial investment was 25 lakh rupees, whatever they got it from institutions. Thereafter they put in their own sources, their own funds, borrowed from their relatives and multiple things. So it
Whatever.
was
Yeah.
much more than what the 25 lakh was done. But because of this one element which was there, that the ownership of the intellectual property is co-owned by the institution. Now here is the catch. Now if I as an investor want to invest into this company, I want to make sure that the investment should
Is with the company.
in the company. So intellectual property should be solely belonging to the company. Now here is the
Wow.
co-sharing with an educational institution. I don't want as an investor any co-sharing in the intellectual property.
Absolutely.
Only solution is to get a waiver or complete transfer of right from institution to them. But in the process, these two gentlemen, they went back to the institution. The whole management in the institution had changed within 3 years period of time. Now when the institution said, now we don't want to waive any rights, we want either equity or whatever consideration, so whole deal went down the drain because they took lot of time to get the approvals never happened, and the good investment opportunity,
Was lost.
they lost it. So yes,
Wow.
so fine prints is
Yeah.
very
So,
very important because it might hit you at any point of time which you are not expecting the most. That's the worst part.
I mean, you kind of opened, I'm sure you opened a lot of eyes when you said this, because, a lot of times I have seen, you know, uh, startup companies make this mistake
Mhm.
of agreeing to give a certain amount of equity, or
Yes.
something that they don't realize. I mean, IP, for example, is a intangible asset. They don't realize that they are you know giving away a lot of their power, which they would have otherwise had as inventors,
True.
to somebody else without, they probably don't give it that much importance, and that's where people like you are important. So for our listeners, I mean, it's important to know that Alad is not just a lawyer. He also advises on these things. Given his experience, in this area, he'll actually caution his clients that by signing this agreement, you're probably putting yourself in danger in future. I know he's done that for a lot of his clients. He's not going to say it himself, I know. So it is important to read the fine print, and that's why I have him here. He's also a very meticulous person, and he told me something at the beginning of the podcast, but I forgot to mention it. So I'll mention it now that I remembered it. Is that he is also an on contract, right, with Thinkly. So he is advising Thinkly, although that's got nothing to do with this particular episode. He is here on my invitation, but he just said that for reasons of appropriateness, I should mention it, and I'm mentioning it here. So Allah, there goes what we discussed. Yeah.
Sure.
So well, there are some interesting questions which have come on the group. So can I take one of those?
Yes, please.
So Brian DeMello has
Mhm.
asked, because I think he heard about, I mean, and I hope that's the reason why. So he said, how can I ensure that the termination clause in a contract works in my favor?
Wow. That's a real nice question,
Okay.
Brian. I'm sure you're asking this out of your experience.
Right.
Okay, so should I go with this answer right away,
Please,
or
please. Yeah. Please do.
yeah? So typically, as any business person, or when we come to Indian culture, kind of, when we go for any documentation or any contract per se,
Right.
the initial aspect is about, let's talk about all great things and good things what we are going to do it.
Correct.
Anybody says something like, but what's the exit mechanism? The person is looked upon with a frown and said,
Correct.
oh, by the way, we are all here to join for a good cause, and what are you talking about exit mechanism? The fact of life is that there could be a possibility that if things don't work, we should
Right.
think about it right at the initial stage rather than figuring it out what happens when the things are really not going correct. Okay, so that there has to be a way, a mechanism to be followed, and that's the one of the clauses, termination. So now termination, you will find, Brian, in a lot of cases, the termination clause is unilaterally drafted. That the person, that the company who is having a higher power, kind of, they will have a unilateral clause stating that, okay, we will terminate this agreement with a 30 days notice. If there is a breach by you, then we will terminate this agreement. There is insolvency and blah, blah, blah. So there could be multiple situations where an agreement can be terminated. Now, even if you are not a superpower like the other party, but you are at the level playing field the moment you are entering into an agreement. So the termination clause should be reviewed very thoroughly. For example, if the other company is stating that, look, I can terminate your agreement with 30 days notice without cause also. Now, you might have put in certain investment in terms of manpower, in terms of investment, in terms of capital assets, or any other things for this project. Now, your expectation is that the project will run for 3 years. The ROI is expected over a period of 3 years. Now, suddenly the agreement is terminated within 6 months period of time. You're not going to get that ROI. Now, in terms of these kind of termination clauses, you can delete the clause related to the termination for convenience. It could be only termination for cause, and only cause when and it cannot be single-handed termination. It has to be an opportunity granted to you to give your response, and only when the response is not appropriate, there is an opportunity to rectify that breach. That is not happening. Then there should be certain other elements. For example, it could be amicable settlement. There could be 2, 3 other elements which will be used so that the termination is avoided to a large extent. So a lot of negotiation happens on this clause, and very well sought for this particular answer. Yeah.
I think his specific question is, how do you make it in your favor? So,
Your favor. So
yeah.
your favor is specifically, you have to look at it. What is your vulnerability? What is your apprehension throughout the project? Okay, where do you stand? And that's where the best way to do is that turn the termination clause around so that it gives you a. And I'm going to give a couple of tips to you. You can use it, Brian, for your purpose also. So in case of certain terminations, if there is a certain termination, you can actually ask for minimum guaranteed payments. So if I have made an investment for this project for a period of 3 years, and my investment for this project is 3 crores, now you are terminating this project, okay, within 6 months period of time. For whatever the remaining period, if you want to terminate, okay, you go ahead and terminate the contract unilaterally without cause, but pay my at least 2.5 crores. So those kind of conditions you can put it, which make favorable to you, so that even if the agreement is terminated, you are at no loss in terms of monetary aspects. Okay, you may not get the work experience, but at least you are not monetarily damaged. Okay.
Right. Can I take another question, which is kind of similar, in nature to this?
Sure.
It's asked by Jenny Matthew. So
Right.
the question here is, what steps should I take if I want to amend a contract after it's been signed?
Very
After
valid
it's been
question.
signed. So firstly, can it be done? And if yes, what are the steps to be taken?
Right. So Jenny, thanks for this question, because you will appreciate when one contract is executed, both the parties are working together in good faith terms, and a lot of times the other party may request for certain additions to the scope of work, or certain things which are not stated in the agreement. So you can initiate, and as part of the agreement itself, you can have a particular clause like anything which is changed in the contract. it is considered a change request. And change request may have certain repercussions in terms of time or in terms of monetary consideration also. So in case there is any change request which is happening from the other party, you can evaluate the change request, go back to them that, okay, by the way, we can do this, but there is additional 15 days period. So the project will be delayed or extended by 15 days period. So you are later on not alleged by the party that you delayed the project. Now you requested me, I accepted that, you extended the project for 15 days. Now, because of those additional 15 days of my manpower getting engaged into it, the additional monetary consideration is X, and that should be payable. So if this process is incorporated in the agreement for change request, anything happened on the agreement, it can be documented. And the documentation can happen by way of an addendum. So addendum means it's an additional change made to the agreement. All terms and conditions will remain same. Only these small changes will be applicable, which are agreed by the parties. And those changes can be additions, or it could be deletions also, or it could be certain changes in words or here and there, certain scope. Multiple things are possible, but important is that both the parties should agree with each other. And again, it should be a signed document. Multiple situations we see that only emails are exchanged, or only minutes of the meetings are maintained, or even those are not maintained, just emails are exchanged. They requested me, I accepted, and I started working on it. And then I build later on. And thereafter, the client comes back and say, oh, by the way, so much of building. We have never expected that. You should have told us upfront. So those kind of unavoidable situations can be addressed with these kind of two things.
So here, Allah, my one question to you, I mean, this is out of what you just said, is do we keep it in the contract already that some clauses could change along the way?
Yeah.
So as the relationship proceeds, or as the contract, as we start executing the contract. So should that clause that, some amendments will happen be already there in the contract, or if it's not there, let's say this particular point is not there, that amendment can be made.
Yeah.
Can it still be made?
Absolutely. Because both the parties are agreeing to make this change, and both the parties are signing that this change has been incorporated, and that becomes part of the same agreement. So even if the reference is not made, but both the parties have executed and signed on that change, then it is enforceable, equally enforceable. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good clarification point, because otherwise it will happen only if there's a amendment allowed kind of a situation.
No.
So one more question, Alhad. I mean, we hear of various types of contracts, license agreement and whatnot. So can you tell me typically a business, how many types of contracts or agreements one can get into? Or
there are
at a basic number of them, I mean.
Oh, so even if I pick one industry, you will be surprised. There are so many multiple contracts. So if you go for a say tech kind of company or a software kind of company, you will have an NDA. So most of the people are familiar with NDA or confidentiality agreement. But confidentiality agreement can have multiple additions like non-compete, non-solicitation. In case of employees, it could be assignment of intellectual property rights. So NDA is one type of agreement. If you are appointing somebody as a vendor or service provider who is working on a freelance basis for 2 months, 3 months period of time on a consultancy basis. So it could be consultant agreement. It could be master services agreement. If two parties are working together, so I am hardware company, you are a software company, and we are bidding for a project where hardware and software are both provided together. It could be a consortium agreement, or it could be integration of two systems. So multiple possibilities. So proof of concept could be initial document that I'll give you a proof of concept. If it is agreed, then it becomes a software license agreement. Today, we see most of the softwares are provided on cloud. So software as a service, SaaS model. So those kind of agreements are there. AMC, annual maintenance contract. So multiple types of contract depending on the industry. Now, if you go to industry like a civil construction industry, you will have different types of. So if you are bidding for a tender, there could be a pre-bidding consortium, or there could be an MOU Now, this is a classic question which I typically get at that whether MOU is enforceable
Is
or not.
enforceable. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so it's a memorandum of understanding whether it is enforceable or not. The answer is depending on the situation, it could be enforceable or non-enforceable.
Oh,
So if both the parties have acted upon their commitments, they have done their part of the responsibilities. And now, if somebody is breaching those responsibilities, not adhering to MOU, you can definitely go to the court basis that MOU as well, because it becomes enforceable. Although it's still considered as an MOU, but depending on situation, what parties have acted upon it, it is relevant. So MOU is one document. In terms of educational institutions, there could be different documents. For art and culture, it could be different documents. Website, typically you will have terms of use, privacy policy, refund, return, exchange. So multiple. In terms of investments, it could be shareholders agreement, share purchase agreement, share subscription agreement. So depending on different industry, different situation, you will have lots of agreements.
on a lighter note, maybe it depends on the number of lawyers involved.
Absolutely, you are so right, because every document is interpreted by every lawyer in different manner. So if you have
Correct.
5 lawyers in the room and they are looking at the same paragraph, they may have 10 opinions.
So I agree. I get that. So okay, so we spoke, a little while back about how, this organization, by not reading the fine print properly, actually managed to, give away its IP to, an education institution.
Yeah,
The reason was they didn't read the fine print. They were hurried to move on and get investment and so on. Can you tell me, another example of, let's say, a company which gained, only because they had read the fine print and they had, made sure that they've safeguarded their business? Because I don't want people to misunderstand that, not reading the fine print only makes you to lose business. I am sure there are people who've gained business as well. So gained in their business as well. So
right. So you'll appreciate that business with any municipal corporation is a tender-based business,
tender-based business,
right?
correct.
And typically, all the tenders are floated, all the parties are bidding for it, and thereafter you get the tender. Now, you'll appreciate that all these giant companies who get the tender, they typically subcontract that agreement to other third parties.
Correct.
Now, here we were representing a small time company who were into bridges, construction of bridges on the railways. And they were appointed by, of course, a giant company. And here, two situations we incorporated in the document. And there were liquidated damages in the agreement, which means in case you get delayed on the project, the loss per day is already agreed in the contract, and you have to pay the contract that loss without any questions raised, because it is already predetermined by the parties, and that's called liquidated damage. And it was hefty. And so we spoke to the team members and we just asked about what's the geography, and they explained a couple of points which actually created alarms on our mind. Was on one side there was one small juggies, shanties, and small areas where certain chawls and illegal situations were there. And we said, oh, if they don't move away, and typically those are, controlled by those goons or dadas or bhais out there.
Interests.
And vested interests. So if they don't move away from that area, you will not be able to construct any part of it. And naturally, when vested interests are there, there is no logic which is applied.
Absolutely.
So we incorporated one particular situation there that, okay, in case during the work process, if there is any problem that occurs because of this element or this adjacent area, then we will not be responsible. You will be responsible to take care of it. And because of that, if there is any claim that comes on us or any delays that happens, then we will not be liable for that. That was number one. And it so happened that one of the engineers, he was out by all the vested interest parties, and they slapped him and he was taken to jail or whatever. So this whole process delayed the entire project by 2 months period. But because of this particular clause, our clients could avoid this situation of delay
Damages.
because it was not my responsibility. Another
Right.
situation was there about the water body. There was a small water body, and even if it's a very smallest of the water bodies, it will still come under the environmental authorities. Now, we straight away mentioned that if there is any environmental related approvals which are required, it is the responsibility of the tenderer and the main contractor. It is not on us. And when
Okay.
some agitations happened because of the water body and the delays happened, ultimately the approval was granted, but again it took almost 3 months period of time. The liquidated damages were not applied to our client. Another very much ignored clause, but which happened in their favor, was force majeure. Imagine this contract was given in month of October 2019,
There
and
you
in
go.
March 2020, the COVID happened. And the specific wordings out there was restrictions, endemic, pandemic, all that stuff was mentioned. And if things are restricted because of certain things like that, it will still not be considered as the delay. And the fact remains that the whole project got delayed for actually 6 to 8 months period of time. But our the client were saved. They were not required to pay even single rupee for that. Entire payment was released, and they were happy about
Very nice. So, I mean, that's a great way. Otherwise, I can't imagine with these three situations, and which are very common. I mean, not the third one so much, but the
it. Yeah,
first two are fairly common when it comes to public service, public goods areas.
yeah,
It's very very common that there'll be some jhukki jhopadis and which are illegal by themselves,
yeah.
but you end up in legal litigations and all of that,
Yes.
and the project gets delayed. So even at a subcontractor level, can those be worked out? I mean, is this
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So when subcontracting is dealing with the main contractor, typically main contractor would try to push all their conditions which are there in the tender to you, but
yeah,
certain conditions which may not be really applicable to me. If I am simply a small fabricator, okay,
right,
I cannot take the responsibility of a design. Now, if you have given me a design and
right,
you have stated in the contract that okay, design is provided by me, then now if your design is faulty, I will not be liable. So this has
right,
to be specifically stated. So subcontractor has to go back to them and talk about on a logic basis that okay, whatever fabrication strength of material you have requested me to provide in terms of iron bars or whatever brass or whatever that could be element, whatever the standard you have provided so far, I have done use the same material, I have used the same design, and I have not deviated from that. I will not be liable for any problem that occurs because of your faulty design. And it saves a lot of subcontractors, provided they go back and talk about this particular aspect.
okay. So that's where they need somebody like you who's worked on it, understands these things, rather than somebody who just looks at the legal documents and says these are okay, I think you can
Yeah,
sign, and so on. So going reading the fine print again is very critical.
yeah.
So
So
let's take
one more thing,
yeah,
not just reading the fine print, it is also important what the agreement is silent about. So there could be certain elements which are not stated in the agreement, but which are my real apprehensions and which are my real risks. So I should be eligible to get those risks addressed. But since it is not in favor of the other party, they have excluded all that aspect. So I have to bring it to the fore, make sure that those are incorporated, and it addresses my apprehension.
okay. So I'll take a question which was the first question which came on to when we started this discussion. It
Right.
comes from Vinita. The
Mhm.
questions are, what are some common red flags to watch out for in business contracts? So,
Right.
I just wanted to bring this question in when we discussed, what are the things to watch out for. And, Vinita was the first question which she had put. So, if you can answer that. So, take these two together, maybe the silent aspects
Yeah.
and what to watch out for.
So, thanks, Vinita, for this question. So, typical red flags are related to the responsibilities. Now, when you provide a proposal, you must have provided certain things in the proposal. And those are your responsibilities for which you have quoted for the price or the fees, or it could be the consideration. Now, if the consideration is same, but your scope has changed, that's a very important red flag. Now, here, uh, other party may put certain small sentences like any other reasonable request done by a party should be adhered to. Now, what the reasonable request is a very subjective term.
Very
Okay.
subjective, yes.
Now you have requested me to make a chair. Okay.
Right.
And now I am making the chair for you. Now you say that, okay, my reasonable request is that the chair should look like a lounge seat, like it's a big seat with a lot of fluffy material and all that stuff. So it has completely changed my responsibility. Now, naturally, you come back that kind of material we're expecting, the consideration has to change. This is a common, smallest example. But this is one important aspect you should know, that any change that happens to the specifications which I have provided as part of my proposal, it should be agreed that that additional time material will be required for that. That is one red flag that you should always observe. Secondly is about any indemnification. So indemnification means that if there is any loss incurred by the other party, that you have to indemnify to that extent. So to what extent? Now your contract value is say 5 lakh rupees, and the indemnity sought by the other party is open-ended indemnity. That is definitely a red flag. Here you can actually put a limitation on liability, that my maximum liability is 5 lakh rupees or money received from you, whichever is lesser. Lower. So indemnity is one more flag point. Other area is about intellectual property rights. So if you are creating something which is of intellectual property rights, you should clearly state that this intellectual property rights is transferred to other party or not transferred to other party. Who is the owner of the source code? So this is about software companies. As I earlier mentioned about design related aspects. So design related aspects will come in the automobile sector also. So, you know, all the car makers, they are not the manufacturers of all the small components. There are 1,000+ components which are made by multiple small vendors, and it's put together. Now, if there's any design related fault, for example, we have heard of certain car companies calling back their vehicles for airbags related problems or overheating of the battery. Now, overheating of the battery may not be because of the battery, but it may be because of one of the circuits which are connecting to that. The faulty design of the circuit might be overheating the battery. You never know. But this kind of clauses should be there, that you will not be responsible for faulty designs which you provided. And if it is a faulty material, then I am responsible. But again, I will not be liable for those. Insurance is one more clause. So sometimes people just simply cut and paste certain templates, clauses, and insurance clause. My contract value is Indian rupees 1 million, 10 lakh rupees. And the insurance clause is 1 million US dollars. That doesn't make a sense. It's a 1 million, but Indian rupees versus 1 million US dollars is a different completely situation. And insurance premium for that, what will be the cost of? Who is going to bear it? So these are the red flags. I mean, we can go on for multiple hours, but these are certain.
I guess it depends from the nature of the contract, who's signing it, and so on.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, I think you've kind of broadly covered what could be the potential red flags. I mean, these are red flags which, then that's why they're called red flags. I mean, nobody sees them, and therefore, it can come up. So I mean, have you covered your point about things that the contract is silent on? I mean,
absolutely. Sorry. Thanks for reminding me. So silent is about multiple times where I have provided certain things in the proposal, but since the contract was provided by the client, they have not considered those aspects. Now, when I typically review a contract, I will always ask for a proposal. What kind of proposal you have provided to that? And proposal will always have a lot of assumptions, a lot of situations which I have anticipated. Now, whether the agreement is covering those kind of anticipations or expectations, assumptions, is one gray area which I have to address it at upfront. And silence is critical over there, because post that proposal, agreement is the last executed document. If anything goes wrong, the other party is going to say that, by the way, it is not mentioned in this document,
in the contract,
and this is the final document. And this document is silent about it. If we were agreeing to it, we could have provided specifically into that kind of document. So silent aspects of the contract. So it will take care of your apprehensions. You have earlier experience of this kind of. So when you do this kind of any documentation, please share that knowledge to your lawyer so that they can put those elements in particularly legal manner, so that they can address those kind of apprehensions. So silence is very critical in that. So reading between the lines is especially very, very critical.
Yeah, that's thanks a lot for this. Okay, one more question which I think has been asked by Rashi. So her question is, I wanted to know, what does good faith mean in the context of contract negotiation?
Nice. So good faith is when you are negotiating a contract, it itself is an art, itself is a science, and itself is a commerce also. So negotiation is a completely different area. But when you do a good faith negotiation, the basic intention of both the parties are that we are here as collaborators. Now, I'll give you an example of good faith. Okay. And thanks for asking Rashi this question. So good faith means that I have to be transparent. I have to put forth all the situations. Those are critical to an agreement. Now, I'll give an example of an acquisition related aspect. Again, where investment was supposed to happen in a tech company. And when the due diligence happens, we ask those questions that, do you have any other entities or any other companies which are relevant or which are related to you, kind of. So when the other party, the promoters of the company, they got this due diligence checklist, they responded that we don't have any other entity kind. However, during the course of investigation, we identified that there was one company which is created and that we got it in a very unique manner. We were looking at certain other documents, and the name of that company was mentioned over there. And we thought probably this is an cut and paste, but we went ahead and saw that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs database, who are the founders of that company. And we found that the companies were founded by the wives of those promoters. And now what was not revealed to us was that the entire intellectual property was assigned by this company to that company. Now, this was a particular question which was asked about, do you have any related party or associations or or any companies? And the answer was no. And the critical information was hidden, and that was definitely not in good faith. So the what would have happened, the agreement, the investors never invested into that company, they lost an opportunity. But good faith is you talk to other party upfront rather than other party identifying and unraveling through you. And I will give another example. In one IVF kind of clinic was acquired by a all India giant. And here, one particular situation was there where there was a portion of the property which was occupied by the clinic was not completely legal. Okay. And the owner was not aware until that point of time when the due diligence happened. When he started looking at the document, he found that there is some anomaly, and he found that, oh, there is this particular part is probably not legal. So he said, what to do? And we said that, okay, you have to go back to the investor and share this upfront to them, because this is an illegal portion which can completely turn the whole deal upside down. You go and tell them upfront. Probably they will get certain solutions on that. And that is what exactly happened. We negotiated in good faith, and we, without even they identifying that, we went ahead and said that, okay, this is a situation and we are into full integrity. And the other party appreciated that. They said that, okay, let's do certain drafting in such a fashion that in case there is any claim, the promoter will be liable, and promoter was agreeable to do that. And the transaction went ahead, the transaction happened because of this good faith negotiation. So that's
Okay.
about good faith. It's a elaborate term, but paucity of time can dwell
Thank
on
you.
these two examples.
Thanks. So, Alad, if we put it differently, so moment this whole discussion about good faith comes in, should
Yeah.
that itself be a red flag? That maybe you might want to look into it. I'm not saying it's a bad deal. I'm saying that it's something you need to investigate more and maybe arrive at something that's mutually acceptable, beneficial, or so on.
So good
Because
faith is
typically good
actually,
faith, is I mean, faith is understood. Then
yeah.
why would somebody want to say good faith? I mean, should that also be a red flag for negotiators?
So good faith is a standard term used in a lot of documentation. Of course, reasonable or expected kind of these kind of terms, but those bring a lot of subjectivity. But good faith is the basic intention that the parties
Correct.
are working together on certain basic principles of integrity and openness kind of.
Correct.
So I think if taken in that spirit, the things fall in perfect place kind of.
Okay. So I hope our listeners are very happy with what Allah has to say. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of subjectivity because depending on which sector it is, depending on what kind of contract or agreement it is, and depending on, of course, specific clauses and reasons for those clauses, I'm sure there's a lot of things that will change from contract to contract. And of course, if you have any specific query in that regard, you can reach out to Allah. And if it means you may have to engage his services, you'll have to do that. If your question is very specific to a maybe a negotiation which you're undertaking or whatever. Okay, so changing the tack a bit, Alad. So let's get into the reason why that podcast actually exists. So the whole aspect is business networking. You've been an ace business networker now. More than I mean, I know you for more than 10 years because I started my networking journey about 10 years ago, and you've been in this journey even before me. So you've been in the journey for what, at least 12 years, to my knowledge, or
True.
maybe even more.
True.
So tell me how business networking has helped you, uh, both in terms of your business and in also overall. How has it been for you? Your journey in BNI and so on.
Yeah, so this is interesting because as an entrepreneur, or especially the first generation entrepreneur, you don't have a network of people. You don't have where to find your initial clients, or rather, I would say that even smallest things. How do you talk to unknown people? So, if you look at my persona as an individual, when I worked in corporate, I was a completely introvert kind of person. So I would not go out and talk to unknown people just like that. And but when you come into a practice, you have to break these kind of blind spots, or rather identify these blind spots.
Right.
And of course, public speaking is another area. I mean, engaging a audience, talking to people unknown, and engaging with audience online, offline is different mechanism. However, these are the things which we don't get education in the institutions, colleges. So there could be some small assignments, but which are majorly to tick mark or whatever. But much focus is not there. How do you do that? How do you meet
Right.
people? And there is tremendous learning I have got in my life from different people. Meeting different people itself opens up your lot of thought process. So, for example, I learned about Landmark Forum. So I attended their sessions. I like that concept. So that happened because I met new people and they spoke about it. They shared about it. Another could be that I met one gentleman. He passed away during Corona time. But he was the guy who introduced me to, say, R.D. Burman shows. So he said, Allah, I will invite you for an R.D. Burman instrument. I said, I have never attended. He said, you will attend it and see what happens. And when I attended this session, it was like, wow, one of the best experiences in my life. 40 musicians who performed with R.D. Burman. And it was like one of the best experience. And after that, every year I used to attend that session. that instrumental program. And he was kind enough that he will say, Allah, आपके लिए एक ticket तो मैंने रखा ही रखा है.
ये
So,
रखा है.
so initially was that I alone attended. Thereafter, a few of my friends also attended. They also loved it. So helping people or knowing new people is one area, and the people may not be of your fraternity, but they can make one statement which can help you to break through in your current situations or problems, or when you need, they are around you to help you. So that's the human element, which is
Right.
the most critical. I would say that you should be part of it. Lot of learnings, lot of human aspects that should, and business then becomes a byproduct.
Thanks, Alhad. I mean, that's a take which is quite different from what some of the others gave. Of course, many of them also alluded to what you said, but this whole aspect that it can, it can help you in other interests that you have. Let's say music, for example.
Yeah.
And I was not aware that you're a big R.D. Burman fan. So next time there's something on R.D. Burman, I know that
Please.
I can definitely, invite you. So coming back to contracts, and this probably be the last question, Alhad, because we are almost close to closing the hour. But I just
Right.
thought, I should put this. This comes from Meera Chavan.
Mhm.
So the question is, what should I consider before agreeing to exclusive dealings in a contract?
Wow.
Okay. So, and I just thought this is a bit different. So I just put it. And this is the last question that I have for Alhad. So,
Sure.
pardon me if
Sure.
I'm not been able to take some of the other questions, but, thanks for asking those. And this is to my community. Yeah,
Right.
please go ahead.
Right. So, Meera, thanks for asking this question. So, exclusivity. So, before I talk about exclusivity, I'll talk about contract. Consider contract as a tool to mitigate risks. It is possible to mitigate risks. So, identify what are the risks. Risks are four type of risks. One is about financial risks, which may have immediate repercussion in terms of monetary. There could be operational risks, which are in terms of certain breach might hamper your operational aspects, delay the project, delay the any activity or something like that. Third is about, which is important to you, Vipul, which is the reputational risks.
Right.
Suppose if there is a construction of bridges happening, some part, a bridge part falls down or something that happens, or it's a consumer product. It is FSI or any organizations bring a ban on that.
Correct.
That particular, this is a reputational risk. And lastly, it's about the risk of life and property. So whenever agreement is created, these kind of elements should be identified as where I do get into these four quadrants, and those risks are identified in a contract or not. And now coming back to your exclusivity related aspects. Now, a lot of times when you are representing any dealer or any organization, any manufacturer, they would say that you would be our exclusive dealers, which means you will not sell or market the products of other parties. It's a fair expectation. Now, this is a fair expectation. Now, when you are representing them, but you should be able to generate that kind of market in the, you need to have that kind of brand value, and you should be able to at least recover your investment from that.
Correct.
But if that exclusivity is hampering you from selling other products, so exclusivity has to be very, very critically defined at what means exclusivity. It could be exclusivity in terms of the product. It could be exclusivity in terms of geography. So if I live in Thane, then you can talk about that, okay, the periphery in Thane, you are the exclusive party. That's beneficial to me. But if you say in a very generic terms that you are exclusive only for, say, Wagle Estate area, it's a very small area per se. So it is very critical that what exclusivity you are agreeing to. Correct. Now it is other side. If you are appointing somebody, for example, if you are appointing someone in, say, South Africa, or you are appointing somebody in Oman or Qatar or Indonesia, Malaysia for your own products, then it is in your interest to put that exclusivity. Okay. But that exclusivity again should be there for a period. Now, if you have appointed somebody as a distributor for, say, 3 years, and if the person is appointed for 3 years and there is an exclusivity for 3 years and he is not performing at all, because this contract is binding, you will not be able to replace him. So exclusivity can be created by having conditions. For example, you can have a conditional exclusivity. That's for 6 months you are exclusive. If you are able to perform six within 6 months period of time up to the targeted turnover or expectation of XYZ, then exclusivity continues for 3 years period, or
Right.
exclusivity can be reviewed at every anniversary of the contract. If you are not performing, why should I only work with you? I should be able to work with other vendors also who are ready to bring more business to me. So exclusivity can bind you, or so when you are getting this kind of exclusivity clauses, you have to very critically analyze what is the obligation. Do you have any way out or exit route from the exclusivity? So those are very critical aspects.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alad. I think you touched upon that beautifully. I mean, in the sense that when you make a exclusivity clause in your contract, you typically, most people think that you are going to gain something,
Yeah,
but what you said is, what is it that you could lose as a result of it is also something you need to keep in mind.
very
Thank
true.
you very much for answering that. And I also want to say that this was the last question. So we're going to close at this stage, Alad. Thank you
Sure.
very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed
Absolutely.
talking to you because, 1 hour with you is like a lot of time.
Nice.
And, opened up on some of those critical aspects. I hope people listening to this podcast also gained a lot and make them only richer in terms of trying to close some of those contracts that they want to close it properly. And Allah, if you could just send me your contact details,
I will
because
check.
some of the community members of the community might want to get in touch with you for
Sure.
queries, or some of them may have some issues that they're dealing with and would like to take your help. So it will just help them. If you can just post your email ID and phone number. What
I
I'll
will.
do is I'll post it here along with your LinkedIn profile, so they
Sure.
can get in touch with you directly and take it on from there. I wish you all the very best, and of course I'll meet you every week
Thank
as
you,
part of our
Vipul.
business networking, and I'll probably have more occasions to talk to you in future.
So I thank you, Vipul, for this opportunity and for your adhikar on me to drag me into this. Allah, I want you here, and thanks for that. And thank you, Thinkly, as well, for providing this as a platform. It's a wonderful community, and I'm sure it's
Right.
going to grow tremendously. Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Thank you.